Got it.
Got it. Okay. Hey peeps, I'm back and I just had a brief conversation with my guest here. I am super excited about my next guest. I did a video earlier this year on the mighty Conemelt, and one of the members of that band is here with me right now. His name's Ashley Marlowe, and I'm trying not to gush too hard. I just gushed a little bit with Ash, uh, but this band means a lot to me, and they meant a lot to a lot of people back then. And they were one of those bands that were very unique, and we're going to get into why that's unique. I'm not going to sit there and explain to everybody why they're unique. We're going to talk about it, and hopefully, people who watch this can figure that out on their own, because I don't want to sit there and tell people what to think about music and art in general, and I can't imagine Ash wants that either. So anyway, this is Ashley Marlowe from Conemelt, and
Hello.
Conemelt's not around anymore, right?
No, we wound things up after the fourth LP, which I think was 1998, but I could be wrong.
Pickle
That's
Brick
the
City right
one.
here.
Yep.
This is this is
Oh,
Ashley right
yeah,
here.
yeah,
About
yeah.
25 years ago, he's rocking the dreadlocks.
Do you know what? When we look back at that photo, we suddenly thought it actually reminded us of the inside of like a club gentleman's toilet or
I was gonna
something.
say,
Unfortunately.
it looks like a
Um,
bathroom, yeah.
yeah, yeah. Um,
Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, no. Well, basically, yeah, sort of got to a point. I did go on and continue doing some more electronic music with uh, people from Conemelt, but we tried out various different pseudonyms after Conemelt. We just kind of retired Conemelt at a certain point because we kind of felt like we really kind of exhausted ourselves under that name, and it didn't really feel like we were kind of progressing very far. Like it wasn't about having a career, but as such. But I think we felt as if people over here as well, they kind of gotten used to us, and perhaps we weren't able to sort of reach. We wanted to see if we could reach people by going more underground and being sort of less visible,
Hmm.
and did a lot of projects after that for probably about another 3 or 4 years or
Yeah,
so, I think.
yeah.
Yeah.
You guys had a lot
Um,
of different names too. New Ground was your label, right?
yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, we started that. Yeah, we started that because we had too much sort of material. Ah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. See, that
My
was
my
recorded.
great record.
Thank you. I think we kind of dismissed that one a little bit, to be
Oh yeah?
perfectly honest. Yeah, because I think we were sort of really still trying to find, who we were,
Hmm.
find our own kind of voice, or at least find a way to translate, our personalities more effectively into the music. So
Yeah.
it's a little bit more influenced by other stuff,
Yeah.
um,
And we were
like
talking
Sean.
about that. We Before we started, we were talking about that. Like, if you don't mind, maybe we could go back for like
Yeah,
how you started, because you had mentioned you
yeah,
watched my channel and I was talking about different genres, and that's kind of what I liked about Cone Melt is that
yeah.
you guys were not a faceless techno band in a decade where that was what techno was all about, really. And that's not what really Cone Melt was. You guys were
No,
a lot of different influences like jazz and
yeah,
even rock influences. Punk was it wasn't so much in the sound, whatever punk means, but more in your approach. So yeah,
absolutely.
I'm definitely interested how like what are your roots? Like
Right, okay. Well, I mean, for me personally, I mean, what happened with electronic music and me was that my dad sat me down. He was a DJ, and he used to buy records every week on a Friday night in a local record store. And aside from buying stuff that he would play out, he would buy sort of other sort of key records that were sort of making waves, essentially. He was quite good at sort of keeping tabs on sort of whatever sort of zeitgeists were coming through. And he came home one day with Autobahn by Kraftwerk.
oh, there you go.
Uh-huh. And he actually, because he was a bit like this, and I lapped it up. Because it was the way I bonded with my father was through listening to music, and he put the headphones on me because there's lots and lots of stereo on that
Yeah.
track in
Oh yeah.
particular,
Yeah.
right? With the
The car
simulated
sounds.
cars and
Yeah.
trucks going left to right and that.
Yep.
And yeah, and he put the headphones on me and basically said, "Oh, I don't know if see what you think of this. It's this German band sort of recreating the experience of a motorway journey using these electronic instruments." And put the headphones on me, and I sat and actually listened to the entire thing without getting like bored. I was just mesmerized. Um, so that really set something going, I think, in me.
That's
And
great to hear too. I had that same experience with my dad, Autobahn.
really
Yes.
amazing,
He grew up
amazing.
listening to a lot of krautrock and a lot of psych stuff, but Autobahn, like you said, how long is that song in the album? Like 22
About
minutes or
20
something?
minutes. About 20
Yeah.
minutes. Yeah.
And so that was something too, like the fact you could sit and listen to a song that was that length and be
Yeah.
completely compelled by it.
Well, the thing about it is it goes off on it always keeps like going back to the sort of refrain and the kind of chorusy type
Yeah.
part, but then
Yeah.
it'll go off on departures. There's about two or three departures, aren't there? And then there's that kind of there's just all these different departures, different sort of uh, routes it takes. It
Hmm.
goes off into different places and then returns again.
Hmm.
So I think that's why it wasn't like you were just listening to something that was just repeating for 20
Yeah.
minutes. It
Yeah,
was
there's something that interesting too, like how they didn't divide it into parts.
yeah,
As for myself as a kid, it was like it's great that they can dedicate this one idea to one brief track length and not divide it into parts. Like with Pink Floyd or something, they do Welcome to the Machine and it would be four parts, But with
yeah,
Autobahn, it was just one long experience.
yeah.
The timing also kind of fascinated me. I don't know if that makes sense, but
Yeah. Well, I mean, one observation I was going to make was, I mean, I love the whole track. I love, you know, I love the whole composition, but I also remember being really, really struck by and I'm going to sing it,
go for
but
it.
the kind of bounce,
Yeah,
the kind of the minimal section,
yeah,
the
yeah,
really stripped back sort of double time minimal section,
hmm,
like that as well, like really, really hit me.
yeah,
Like, because it was going beyond melody there,
yeah,
and actually you're just appreciating the
yeah.
electronic textures and sounds and stuff.
Yeah,
And
that juxtaposed to like the poppiness too, because when they say farn, 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 it's almost like fun, fun, fun from the Beach Boys. Like that's what I
yeah,
was hearing. It was like
yeah.
you have
Am
the
I
Beach
allowed to?
Boys.
Am I allowed to smoke? Is that?
No, no
No,
smoking.
I mean, there's no legal.
Oh shit, no, no, no. And you can say whatever the fuck you want if you want to swear, fucking swear.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
it's all good. Yeah.
My daughter might watch this now, and she'll be disappointed if I do. So I'll have to be careful.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay, so yeah, craft work. Yeah, that's so that led into I assume like just from the vibe of Cone Mode, I would think you were way into punk too, yeah?
Yeah, yeah. Well, what I was going to quickly say was we had, yeah, punk had a massive impact on me. I was hearing Stranglers, Damned,
Yeah.
Sex Pistols, and all of the kind of the bands that were crossing over into the top 40.
Yep.
I was only really young at the time, but like my dad got me started so young on music, it was totally natural for me to be listening to, like, I mean, literally in '77 I was 6.
Okay, yeah. You're my age.
So
Yeah.
right, and but I was already like, I mean, I'd been, I don't know how it happened so young, so young, but
Yeah.
I'd already been through the kind of the training or preparation work
Yeah.
with, like, Beatles, Rolling Stones, and then heavy rock as well. I used to listen to a lot of my dad's heavy rock records like Black Sabbath and Deep Purple, Led Zeppelin, and all that.
Yeah.
And yeah, Pink Floyd and things. But yeah, punk come along, and as a really young child, the energy of it was just completely,
Yeah.
it just just really got me going,
Yeah.
basically.
Did you grow up in Brighton too?
No, actually, I'm from Kent, which is a county which is just south of London.
Mm-hmm.
So right,
You were pretty close by when punk was, when the Stranglers and Sex Pistols, when they were starting to break into
yeah,
the mainstream. Yeah.
yeah. We didn't really. I'm trying to think if we had any punk bands in our area that made any waves, but we didn't really. Tunbridge, the town that, in fact, we tried to sort of not mythologize, but we did put Tunbridge quite a lot on our sleeves. Like the back of 24 carat Conemelt
Yeah.
has references to Tunbridge.
That was
All
really
our photos were taken, in and around Tunbridge, and that's it. It says there Tunbridge Centre. Yeah, that's my mum's house, and that's the car is the car that we used to tour in, which is
oh.
an old Ford Capri. Um,
Two door. Yeah.
yeah,
Wow. I'm just
we used to grab
imagining
them.
everything crammed into that car right now.
Yeah, and we drive all the way to Glasgow, like all the way up the other end of the country, up to Scotland. In that, yeah.
Wow. What
Mm.
were did you go on any major tour? I mean, I'm jumping all over the place, but did Cone Melt go on any big tours at all?
We did a tour in the UK
Okay.
with Andrew Weatherall.
Yeah.
Um, he headlined every night, and we supported him. And we did about, I think we did about. It wasn't extensive. We did about 7 or 8 cities, something like that,
Hmm.
and that was a really good experience. It was quite funny though because Andrew hired a tour bus for us, and it was quite opulent. It really was. It was
Oh,
like a
I'm
double
sure.
deck. It was a double decker, and we had a lounge upstairs with the video player
Man.
and all
Yeah,
that kind of stuff. And yeah,
I miss Andy. I mean, I didn't know him, but man,
yeah,
how did you get in contact with him? Was he a fan? Obviously, I'm sure you guys were fans of his.
yeah. I mean, this is going to jump around a lot. This conversation.
It
I
is.
think this
Should
is the
we should we
problem.
go chronologically? Do you want to go
No,
chronologically?
I think this is the problem with Comel. There's actually, and part of the reason why I wanted to do this is because, like, okay, thank you. Yeah, 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 yeah. I mean,
This is how
again,
I learned of Cone Melt. This was my intro. This was Weatherall's label.
this
Crash Bang Wallop.
I think for
Fucking
us,
great song. Great two great songs on that record. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, Crash Bang obviously has more of a trancey influence because that was
Yeah.
really initially we weren't actually that conscious of like Detroit techno and stuff.
Hmm.
Um, we were listening to a lot of like German kind of sort of trance stuff, basically, and a bit of we were buying early Warp releases.
Yeah.
But obviously, you had LFO.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
LFO is my favorite warp. I mean, it's difficult to come up with one, but fuck, man, I love LFO.
Mm,
They, I think it more than any other act, they embody what that label. And Mark Bell's not even around anymore, but I still think LFO embodies what that label was about the best.
yeah, definitely. I mean, like that single "LFO" by LFO, it actually went into the UK top 40 chart, which was a big thing in England. We used to have the top 40 each week. There'd be the rundown of the top 40 singles played on national radio. And then we had Top of the Pops, which was a national TV program every Thursday night.
Right.
But yeah, a lot of the early sort of things that were coming up from rave and club culture that were
Hmm.
making it into the charts for things like Voodoo Ray by a guy called Gerald,
Yeah. Yeah.
LFO by LFO,
Yeah.
Orbital Chime, records like
Yep.
that. These were the records that were sort of like giving you sort of because we were still quite young in '87. Well, yeah, I was 16 in '87. I didn't really start getting out into proper clubs until the early '90s.
Okay.
Um,
Hmm.
so I missed a lot of the very early stuff.
Well, that's
Um,
what was cool, at least to us Americans. Like we had all the Detroit stuff, and then
mm,
it was the Brits that kind of flipped it on its head, like
mm,
LFO. Like you
mm,
guys came up with this sound that was like, oh shit. Like to me at least, it was much more sophisticated. Like the Detroit, not that the Detroit stuff's bad. It's just very simplified. It's a
yeah.
groove and a drum and
Mm,
bass, and it's just meant to shake your insides. Where LFO and guy called Gerald, they did,
mm.
and even Graham Massey, they took that
Oh
idea,
yeah.
just kind of they just completely, well, they put a British a British flavor to it, I thought.
Well, the main thing for me about LFO, aside from its general brilliance, in terms of its kind of the layers of sort of bleeps and the
Yeah,
drums and everything, is that it every now and again it breaks down into those massive sub bass bits.
yeah. Do you
And
remember there was a warning on that record, like this can destroy your speakers? I always
right,
wondered if that's what part of the cone melt was about, like melting speakers.
well, that was Andrew. Actually, it's good to go back to Andrew, because you asked how we got connected to him, and I definitely think I should recount that story in just a
Yeah,
second.
please,
But
please.
no, he gave us the name. Well, he I mean, inadvertently, we were having a conversation with him, because we'd done the Corridor EP,
Hmm.
which was actually four of us. It was the three members of Conemelt plus another guy called Chris,
Okay.
Chris Barter. We were all friends in Tunbridge, and we'd all met, and we started making. They all had synths. I just had electronic sort of drum pads at the time. I'll quickly come back to that in a minute,
Okay.
because my background was a drummer, and we did the Corridor EP with Andrew, but the Corridor was never really on that record. There's two tracks that are by me, Nat, and Grant, and then there's one by me and Chris, which is X, which is
Oh
the
yeah,
last track.
yeah.
Yeah, which is kind of more of a minimalist thing, because
And it's on Sabers. Yeah.
that's right. And so Chris was more into this kind of darker minimal aesthetic, and we quickly realised really that we were pulling in different directions. So it made sense to sort of for the Corridor to carry on as just me and Chris,
Hmm.
because I basically would stick my oar in anywhere I could. Musically, I was just all over everything. But and then Comel, but really it was about releasing me, Nat, and Grant a bit, because we knew that we were going to want to do stuff that he wouldn't approve of musically.
Hmm. Hmm.
So we started making music, and Andrew definitely was up for releasing some. And we
Nice.
were having a little meeting with him in his office in London, in Soho,
Yeah.
and we'd just done a gig. We hired a local sort of hall and hired a PA, a turbo rig PA. It was only like a few K.
Right.
And I DJ'd, and we got smoke machine, and we got a bunch of lights, and we did this live gig. And then all of a sudden, the PA cut out, and the speakers, there was smoke coming out of the bass bins. And we were telling Andrew about it, and he said, "Oh, the cone melt sessions, meaning speaker cones melting."
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, and we sort of sat there, and I don't know if it happened instantaneously or whether we were on the train on the way back home. And it was just like, oh, cone melt. Maybe that will do for a name. We needed a name,
Yeah.
and but it was in conversation with Andrew that it came up. So
Yeah. So
so
that
there we
must have
go.
been like 92-ish,
No,
right?
it was 93 into 94.
Oh, okay. Because the first cone melt, this was 93, right?
No, that's 94, I think.
Is it?
I think
Oh,
so. Does it
hmm.
not say on it?
No, no. Well, I don't think so. Let me see.
No.
No, yeah, these Sabres records did not have a date. That's kind of part of the cool mystique about it, really. You can
Yeah,
pick these records up and, they can sound as dated as you want them to sound, which this
yeah.
does. Oh, okay, yeah. Oh wait, maybe I'm thinking of this. This was 93, yeah?
I think that might have just snuck inside of 93.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like basically, we recorded that stuff as a demo for Sabres, and they had too much stuff to put out, and we
Yeah.
were so impatient. I was just like, "Fuck it, let's just start our own record label and put it out ourselves." So,
Yeah. There is something
and then
really raw and nasty about this one that I love. You can
right,
you
okay,
can hear it, because
right,
well, God, we are skipping all over the place here, but your later stuff did sound a little more polished. I mean, to me, I don't know, but this stuff sounded a lot more raw to me, and then you got into this more polished. I mean, the vibe was always there. That never changed, I think, but the early stuff, it definitely had I don't know, a more 8-track vibe to it, if you will.
Well, a lot of the early stuff, some of the early releases and stuff were recorded onto cassette tape,
Yeah.
just 2-track stereo tape, because we couldn't even afford a digital tape machine at the time. And
Mm,
then we got a DAT machine, and that was a big deal for us.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, you mentioned this, and you're quite perceptive in saying that, because there is a difference. Basically, what happened is all of the early stuff was made on equipment that we picked up from people down the local pub, just from sort of electrical
Yeah.
uh, shops.
You can hear it.
Out,
You can hear that. It's really audible, It's great.
well, a lot of the digital stuff was starting to sort of take
Yeah.
over at
Hmm.
that stage. So a lot of the analog synths and that weren't actually as in favour, and they weren't as expensive and they weren't
Sure.
as collected as they now are.
Hmm.
So you could actually pick up like a Juno 60 Roland,
Hmm.
for like a couple of £100 or something like that.
Oh, wow. It's
Yeah,
not like that
yeah,
anymore. Yeah.
no, not at all.
Yeah.
And a lot of the analogs we had were just weird ones as well, like made by short-lived sort of companies like that might have existed in the 70s, or
Yeah.
like we had two of this synthesizer made by a company called Tysco, but it looked a bit like Tesco, which was a big supermarket brand
Yeah. Is
here
Tesco still
in,
around, by the way?
what's that, Tesco?
Are they still around?
What, as supermarket you mean?
Yeah, the Tesco.
Tesco supermarkets are still around,
They're
yeah.
still around. Okay, okay. I thought you said they weren't. I was like, I mean, I've been to England before. I was like, there's no Tesco anymore. Oh my God, that's crazy.
No, it was Tysco was the name
Tesco.
of the manufacturer. So it's Tiesco. And again, who's heard of Tysco synthesizers, right? It's not Roland, it's not Korg, you
Yeah,
know, it's not Casio or whatever.
yeah,
Tysco, and they were called Synthesizer 67s, and we had like two of these, and we picked them up for probably like 70 quid a piece or whatever. But they're monophonic; you could play chords on them,
hmm,
but you could sequence them via certain leads, and we used those a lot. But no one
yeah,
really knew where they come from, what they were.
yeah.
Um, but we did have some nice synths, but again, we picked them up really cheap. Um,
Was that part
but
of it too?
they
Like
were,
when you were starting to make music, like in the 80s coming up, was that part of your allure to dance music? Like it was new, trying to figure out this new thing, this new equipment, this
yeah,
new vibe?
yeah. It was like we were like really aware of the rave scene sort of
Hmm.
exploding, and we were sort of down in this sort of small town in Kent, and not quite sort of either brave or old enough to sort of get stuck into the M25 raves and
Yeah,
things like that. And there were a lot of like illegal parties and stuff.
yeah. Because the
Um,
raves really originated in the UK. They didn't, I mean, there were parties here in the US, but I mean, the term rave started in the
yeah,
UK.
I suppose like Grateful Dead gigs and things sort of almost have a little bit of a
Yeah.
not I mean, it's not a direct comparison, but you know what I mean.
Oh,
There's
totally. Yeah. The energy.
similar.
It's really, that's what's enjoyable about music to me. It's really not, I don't give a shit if it's synthesizer, drum machines, or guitars, or banjos. It's if the
Yeah,
energy is right,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I mean, me too. I mean, like I like listening to all kinds of music. I enjoy like listening to John Fahey, acoustic guitarist.
Hmm.
Uh, like listening to his music and stuff. Like, it's just an acoustic guitar.
Sure.
And on some of his early records, you can even hear his like there's one song he starts and his dog starts barking in the background, and he stops and says
Oh.
like tells the dog to, he goes like shh, you know what I mean, or whatever at the dog, and then starts the song again, and it's like
Yeah.
it does that kind of rawness
Hmm.
I really like as well.
Yeah.
But going back to Andrew just for a minute,
Yeah, please.
because because it explains a bit.
Yeah.
So chronologically speaking, yeah, Kraftwerk, and then we had this thing in England where the synth pop thing kicked off, um, and underneath that, the industrial scene, the original industrial scene. we knew it as industrial music
Hmm.
here, but this is not, like Skinny Puppy or 9 Inch Nails, or this was Throbbing Gristle.
Hmm.
Throbbing Gristle were the key, were the
Yeah,
key band really.
absolutely.
Um, so you had synth pop, so you had your Depeche Modes, and then you had like bands like Human League as well, who started off a bit more experimentally and things like that. So and Gary Newman, John Fox, all these different people.
Hmm.
So that was obviously keeping my appetite for electronic music kind of fed. And then you get into the 80s, and I discovered Robin Gristle, and that was great, because I really genuinely felt like, although they were very arty
Hmm.
in a way, also I felt the sort of aggressiveness of what they did and stuff was comparable to the kind of the punk aesthetic,
Hmm.
Cabaret Voltaire as well, like early Cabaret Voltaire stuff. Love that.
Yeah, definitely.
So this was all happening, and then, but I hadn't really thought about doing electronic music until the rave scene started up, and things like Pacific State by 808 State,
Hmm.
and like Play LFO and all these Stack of Humanoid.
Oh,
I don't know if you know
yeah.
that track.
Yeah,
I
Brian
mean,
Wiggins. Yeah.
absolutely love that track still to this day.
Mhm. Me too.
And I remember finding a copy of that in a squat in Tunbridge, squatted house that I was in, and someone had the 12-inch Stack of Humanoid in their room, and they had quite a nice sort of hi-fi with separates, quite a powerful amp and some good
Yeah.
speakers.
Yeah.
And I just played, and I was there one night. We were all doing like hot knives and stuff in the kitchen, and there was this room next to it, and I found that they had that 12-inch, and I just played it and played it and played it like over and over and over and over again, about like a dozen times in a row,
Yeah, that was a
and
big
just
track for sure. Yeah.
and just danced around the room on my own. You know what I mean? Like I was having my own private rave basically, and
Well, they're
uh,
still re-releasing that song too. That song keeps getting new remixes and
does it?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Never beat a particular. I think it's there is a classic original mix, which is always going to be
Yeah,
the
I
one.
think they pulled in Luke Vibert to do a newer mix, and
Oh, okay, that
he
could
nailed
work.
it. He nailed it, but he was there, you know. I think he
Yeah.
understands the aesthetics of that original
Well,
vibe.
although Luke Viber, I mean, there was all that plug research stuff. Wagon, was it Wagon Christ? Was that him? Yeah,
Yeah, Wagon Christ. Yeah.
and all that. So there was all that kind of like breakbeat kind of stuff and mad shit he was doing. But whenever he does acid, he's really good at acid as
Yeah,
well. He knows how to do acid, man.
absolutely.
One of my favorite acid producers is American actually,
Oh yeah.
and that's Woody McBride. Do you know his work?
No, I don't think so. No.
Yeah, he ran a couple of labels out of Minneapolis. I actually put a record out on his label at one stage
Woody
in the 90s.
McBride, is that what you said?
Woody McBride.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he had two labels, really unusual stuff. One was called Sounds, and one was called Communique. And the way he did acid back in the day, the way he put his tracks together, it's totally something special. Like Plastic Man as well. That
Oh
was
yeah.
that was
Richie
some good
Hawtin.
shit.
Yeah.
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 Um, Quickly going back to the Andrew thing. So what happened was, so rave come along, and then we were starting hearing this stuff in the early 90s, and then it got to about 92, 93. Nat and Grant had been buying synths, Chris had been buying synths, and then it was like, oh well, maybe we should start hooking these up together and seeing if we can construct dance music out of them.
Hmm.
And then there was an interview in a dance music magazine over here with Andrew, where he was talking about starting the Sabres label, and he put an address for demos in there.
Oh, nice. Was that
Now we
Jockey
didn't.
Slut by any chance?
Sorry.
Was that Jockey Slut by any chance?
Do you know what? I've got the feeling it wasn't anything quite as cool as that, although that was a good
Oh,
magazine.
it was.
I
Yeah.
think it may have been DJ even, but
Oh,
but
okay.
but basically, and he was talking about the first release, and we didn't really know Andrew's work that well. I mean, I was aware of him as a sort of a remixer, doing sort of like, I suppose, Primal Scream and My Bloody Valentine and things like that.
Yeah.
But we weren't like put it this way, we were not fans. We weren't, because he had already had a big following by that stage.
Hmm.
But we weren't in that number. And but the reason why we sent him a demo was because the first release on Sabres is his version of United
Yeah, Psychic
by Throbbing
TV.
Gristle.
Hmm.
So we were like, this guy likes Throbbing Gristle, we like Throbbing Gristle, let's send him a tape.
Nice.
So it was through the connection of Throbbing Gristle that we actually bothered to send him a tape. And we sent it off, and we sat around for a while, and we thought, oh, we're not going to hear anything. And then one day he phoned us up, and
Nice. Wow. Yeah.
we're very, very, very excited.
Yeah,
It's
PT001 is the name of that record, I think. It's
yeah,
PT for Psychic TV. It was
yeah,
Genesis Peorage. Yeah.
yeah,
I still have that song in my head too. I can hear the melody right now because
yeah,
I mean, that was something that great that Weatherall did is like I thought, I mean, I could be wrong, you can correct me, but when it came to his remixes, he was the first person to kind of turn a song on its head. Like it
yeah,
got to a point with some of his remixes, you didn't even know that it was the same song, and he would do
yeah,
multiple remixes. And
yeah,
this guy completely changed the landscape of remixing, which is just
yeah.
commonplace and has been for a long time. But back then, it wasn't commonplace at all.
I thought it was really interesting because what he did was, he wasn't a musician
Yeah.
as such, although obviously over time, he would have kind of, his skill set would have developed.
Hmm.
But when he was first asked to do remixes, it's because he was a taste-making DJ on the underground acid house and kind of rave scene in London, and had all these connections to like the parties and he was DJing at sort of all of these really influential early
Yeah.
club nights and things, and so they would get him in to sort of, for him to put, so that they could sort of almost like graft on, or get some of that vibe into what they were doing. So if you take the remix of Soon by My Bloody Valentine,
Yeah.
what he did was, he went into the studio with a bunch of records. He was a DJ, and he went in and he had an engineer. I think it's Hugo Nicholson, I think, but he had an
Yeah.
engineer,
It was. Yeah.
and he would go in there with these records, and he'd worked out that he wanted certain parts of these records, and he would say to the engineer, right, record this now, can you loop that up for me? So
Okay.
on that record, straight away, you've got the guitar from What We All Want by Gang of Four.
Yeah.
The that's the beginning of What We All Want by Gang of Four.
Hmm.
So you've got these kinds of cut and paste kind of sample collage
Hmm.
style approach. Same with Loaded by Primal
Right.
Scream.
Yeah.
It's got loads and loads of samples. It
Hmm.
basically, he reconstructed it using samples,
Hmm. Yeah.
rather than programming and stuff like that too so much.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what he I don't know if there were so many samples on it. I remember my intro to Weatherall was his I don't know how much of his mix it was because I know Oakenfold was in there too, but it was the Happy Mondays.
Yeah,
Hallelujah. That was my
yeah,
intro to the world of Weatherall. I was like, what the fuck is this? Because I remember hearing an interview with Sean Ryder,
yeah.
and he and Bez were somewhere, and they were out of it as they always were, but they were in a club, and Weatherall's mix of Hallelujah was playing, and they were like, "Holy shit, what is this?" And Sean was like, "It's us." They didn't even know, but
I
that
could well
I
believe
think
that. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, but I think that's a good microcosm, like snapshot of what made Weatherall great. Really, is he just
yeah,
I think it was so one of the members of Primal Scream. I saw this in an interview with Weatherall where maybe it was Duffy, I don't know, but he went to Weatherall and said, "Just fucking destroy it."
yeah,
That was his credo until the day he died. Just fucking destroy it,
yeah,
and he
yeah.
did. Yeah,
Well, you see, because it progresses from there. His early remixes, like I say, there's a lot of him bringing records in as a DJ, and
yeah,
and using samples from records that he had in his collection,
hmm,
and and then and then when he started Saves of Paradise, what he did then was is he hooked up with Jags Cooner and Gary Burns.
Yeah.
Gary was a really talented keyboard player.
Mm-hmm.
I went in the studio. I went to the studio a couple of times. I was lucky enough to. The Flight Path Estate, it was called.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was very close to Heathrow Airport. The
Okay.
planes used to fly over so low. It was like they was so. It was really noisy. But anyway,
Okay.
but
That's great to know, by the way, because that Two Lone Swordsman album, the Return to the Flight Path Estate, one of
yeah,
my all-time favorites. So to
right.
now hear what that means is awesome. Anyway, go
Yeah,
ahead.
literally, it's because they yeah, and it was above a row of shops. It was in a really kind of rundown area. It was you went up these back steps and yeah, but then when you got in there, it was kitted out with some great stuff. And Jags was a really really fantastic engineer. So
Hmm.
you had Andrew, who was kind of like the tastemaker, the kind of he had a lot of he was able to sort of conceptualize or had ideas about what he wanted to hear, but
Right.
he had two people to help him technically facilitate things. So if he couldn't get on a keyboard and play it, he could turn to Gary and say, Gary, can you do something a bit blah blah blah, and he would just
Yeah.
improvise and play stuff until Andrew was like, yeah, that's it.
Nice.
And Jags would sort of put it all together
Hmm.
at the mixing desk and stuff. So they had this really good sort of way of working.
You could
I
hear a
was I was
difference
quite
too.
sad when they sort of well, I say sad. I mean, I didn't cry, but I was a little bit disappointed when they weren't able to carry on going for one reason or another. I'm not sure why.
I was
Um,
actually going to ask you that because I remember, at least, I mean, you can't believe what you see in the press, but I remember when Sabres broke up, it seemed like Andy just was ready to do Two Lone Swordsman. Like all of a sudden he hooked up
yeah.
with Keith Tenniswood, and
It
I
may well be.
never. What's
It
that?
may well be that they just that he'd met Keith and they had a little session and realised that he felt comfortable working with Keith. Now I've met Keith a few times because he gets out. I mean, obviously he's done Radioactive Man.
Yeah,
Um,
brilliant stuff.
do you know the track Uranium?
Oh, are you kidding? I love that whole album. His first album is fucking amazing, but Uranium is great.
I played that out about a year ago somewhere to a bunch of people that I'm pretty sure had never heard it before.
That's a
And when
great.
that kind of weird rattly kind of bass
Yeah,
first dropped in, it caused a really nice ripple through the crowd. Do you know what I
but
mean? You could
yeah.
hear people, reacting to it and stuff.
Well,
You
and
know
you
what I
could
mean?
when he started doing Radioactive Man too, you could definitely hear his influence in Two Lone Swordsman because as people, we're outsiders. Like whether I was such a big, or he's still such a big name. When they started doing the electro thing, I just thought, well, this is where Weatherall wants to go. But then Keith
Yeah,
did that first Radioactive Man. I'm like, oh shit. So
yeah,
a lot of this electro stuff was Keith, man. I mean,
yeah,
that's him because he is a phenomenal producer in his own right. I mean, they're
yeah,
probably all better technical producers than Andy ever was in the first place, right?
yeah. But by that stage, like he was,
Yeah.
well, I'd be sort of meeting up with him because we were still when he started work with Keith, we were still on the label. I mean, we did Confuse and Destroy and stuff, and
Yeah.
he was Andrew was like would be raving about like this new piece of like kit he got. Like I remember he got this thing called a mutator, and all of it, and he was describing to me what it kind of did. And then all of a sudden, like you'd hear the next like two or three records, and they were covered in this
Yeah.
kind of weird modulated sort of
Yep.
LFO bubbly
Yeah.
wobbly strange,
Yeah.
and you'd be sitting. I'd be sitting at home going, that's the bloody mutator. I
And
think
he
it's
would
one of the
name
first.
his remixes that too. He did a remix
Ah,
for Clarisse
okay.
C, and the name of the mix is Double Mutator. And you can hear it.
Ah,
It was that bubbly, housey sound that they had for a
yeah,
couple of years there. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, was it Keith? I guess it was Keith that was helping him do the Blood Sugar and the Anne Day stuff as well.
Oh,
I
was
think.
it?
Oh no, Dave Harrow
Dave Harrow. Yeah.
worked on the
Technova.
Anne Day. Did he do the Blood Sugar stuff as well?
He did. Yeah. He was, it was Dave. No, Dave Hedger was the Blood Sugar guy.
Ah,
and then Harrow, who recorded was it Tech Nova that he recorded
yeah,
at? Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
he did DNA.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
um,
I mean, it
it-
was so prolific. I mean, there was so much stuff coming out,
no, he
and,
was so he couldn't keep up with it. Yeah,
basically, this interview is going to be about Andrew.
we can cut off. We can cut it whenever you need to on
Not
Andy.
at all, no. But what I'm saying is that's just the way it is. Like when you
Yeah.
uh, get sort of got into, you know, once we established a bit of a relationship with him, it's inevitable that I suppose,
Well,
we
we can talk about some of your own releases too. He
were
put out
very,
Emissions, and you had a record on Emissions. Panache, right? That's you. Is Panache you?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I did Jack to Jack, and then I
Yeah.
did,
Spare parts.
yeah, yeah, I did Spare Parts,
Yeah.
which I always felt a little bit like Spare Parts was didn't quite uh connect very well with people, and a bit of a shame because I'm quite fond of, well, I'm fond of all of it, but there's a track on that called Prang that I was particularly pleased with.
It was all good, I thought. I played
Cheers.
I played that in clubs a lot. I mean, half the people were confused because it was a very
Yeah,
hard sound. It was different, but then the other half were totally into it. But to me, that's the
yeah,
mark of a great song when half the audience is like
yeah.
doing, and the other half is like, yeah, more,
Definitely quite twisted. And then
Yeah.
I did a whole side on the compilation, the triple album compilation.
Oh,
I can't remember what
yeah.
it's called. Fresh Emissions, I think it was
Yes.
called. Or something.
Yes. Fresh Emissions.
Conemelt did a side, and then I got to do a side on my own, and I was really pleased with those tracks as well, especially
Yeah.
Lemmy parts 1 and 2. I
Great
really
song.
enjoyed making that track. So
That's an epic song too. That's a long one. Great song.
but it's because it breaks down into that sort of second, like flanging kind of
Yeah.
fading kind of
Oh, it's
bit.
awesome though. It's awesome. That was a great idea too. Like Dave Being had a side, you had a
Yeah,
side. I think even
yeah,
Andy, the swordsman had a side too, maybe
yeah.
there. But it was mainly just showcasing, the other bands on,
Blue, people like that.
yeah, Blue. Yeah.
Trying to figure who else would have been on there. Yeah, you said Being was on there, didn't you?
Uriel was on there too. Remember?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, yeah. Do you ever hear from these guys anymore? Like, what happened to Dave Being? I mean, it's always fascinating to me.
Well,
Like,
he was
we
based in
reached out.
Scotland, so there was no danger of us really running into him, like very
Uh,
much, like socially. So we didn't know anything about Dave at all. We just had these records that Andrew was like really,
yeah.
passionately sort of putting out and stuff. I think we struggled to get our heads around his music at the time, but
Right.
that's largely because we were so uh sort of caught up in what we were doing.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I mean,
His
yeah,
music was challenging. It was definitely, I wouldn't compare it to Coil or Throbbing Gristle, but it was in that world. It was,
yeah, definitely.
I
Yeah,
want
it
to say
wasn't.
ambient. You can't label it ambient either, right? It was just kind of very challenging music.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess the thing for us was is that we were kind of like sort of kind of striking a bit of a balance between some of our more out there instincts and influences, but also kind of essentially wanted to make music that you might
Hmm.
choose to dance to.
Yeah.
Whereas with Being, that wasn't necessarily, it wasn't club music,
No.
like in the usual sense.
Hmm.
Maybe in a second room or a
Yeah.
third room somewhere, someone could create something, use that for kind of mood purposes, and create space with that. But yeah, no, we were, yeah, I suppose so. We were a little bit more traditional in the sense that we weren't ever going to really like abandon that kind of sensibility of that we basically were. Yeah, we wanted. Yeah, we were making what we thought was dance music.
Yeah.
Essentially.
And that reminds me, we're skipping all over the place again too, but like going back to You Fuckers Fuck, which is the first album, did
Yeah.
you, when you approached that album,
Mm.
I mean, it obviously, I guess it was a conscious decision to not be faceless and have a sense of humor, because some of the song titles are like Driving Miss Harry, and the title of the thing. I mean, who couldn't laugh? I remember when I saw that, I was like, I have to pick this album up just for this title alone. Like, that was
Right.
a conscious decision, yeah, to make sure you weren't being those faceless techno boffins that a lot of the techno bands were.
Well, you see, but it kind of caused us some sort of minor issues. I'm sorry, my camera's wobbling about, by the
No, you're
way.
good. It's all fine.
It's holding something in my hand. But, I think that came up because like we were like, what are we going to call the album? And we were struggling to come up with a name, and that was unusual for us because we usually had like all these silly titles, yeah. And that got even more ridiculous as time went on. But we and I think I just grew tired like of the conversation and basically said, "Oh, we should just call it You Fuckers Fuck." And
Yeah,
then and someone said, "Oh, yeah, you can't do that." And then it was like, "Well, hang on a minute.
yeah,
Who says we can't do that? Why can't we do that?" You know. And it was quite, to be honest, it was. I think it. I worried about it a little bit because on one level it is puerile. I mean, it is puerile. There's nothing that there's not
yeah.
really. It's not really that sophisticated to do that. But at the same time, I think it was kind of throwing something down on the ground basically and saying,
Yeah,
you know, because we had a lot of people, like in techno especially, we'd already realized that people like calling that coming up with like inventing words that you couldn't pronounce for their track titles.
yeah, like
Like,
Autechre and Aphex Twin, and yeah,
yeah, things like, and no disrespect to them at
yeah, they're
all.
great. They're great. Yeah,
Of course,
yeah,
and no disrespect to them.
sure.
Or it was kind of this kind of constantly recycling this idea of the future, and what we're doing is like incredibly
Yeah,
you wouldn't understand it. It's very technical. I'm half robot, half man, you know what I mean? And,
yeah,
I might as well have like a chip in the back of my head and
yeah,
wires coming out with fingertips,
yeah,
and like
yeah.
I've fused into my machines and stuff. And we were like, nah, nah, nah,
That's,
let's
as a buyer, that's what warmed me to you guys, honestly, was your sense of humor, because
yeah,
everything that had any electronic music really was very. Some of it was overtly pretentious, but it
yeah,
had that pretension to it. And then you had
yeah,
Conemelt, that has You Fuckers Fuck emblazoned on its cover. And obviously, to me, like you said, it's puerile and juvenile, whatever. But to me, that was the point. It's like, yeah, we're not supposed to do this,
yeah,
but we're doing it.
yeah,
Um, and this is what Comelt is about. And if you're on board, then that's
yeah.
great. And that's how I took it as a listener. It was like, we don't care. We're going to make great music. You can take it or leave it.
Yeah, well, that's great. I mean, and I know the album was quite sort of, it was fairly diverse because like there were certain tracks on there that we recorded earlier, like the first and last tracks, steps 2 and 3, which had originally been part of a 3-track thing called Three Steps to Conemelt, which is based on Three Steps to Heaven, the
Oh,
I think it's Eddie Cochran's song. You
yeah,
see, we always used to reference these things that were completely outside of techno as well,
sure. Yeah.
like as far away from techno as you could get, like a 50s rock and roll artist.
Yeah.
Um,
I never knew that, so that's great to know. Yeah.
well, 24 Karat Comel, there's in Europe, there's a Deep Purple compilation called 24 Karat Purple or something like that. Yeah, 24 Karat Purple. So that's
Yeah.
Dropout Bogey is a Captain Beefheart reference because there's a song by Captain Beefheart called Dropout Boogie
Mm-hmm.
on his first album, Safe as Milk. So
Mm-hmm.
Dropout Bogey, which is on one of our records, that's
Mm-hmm.
and a bogey is snot,
Yeah, yeah,
basically.
yeah.
We
Mm-hmm.
were always just sort of just pissing around really, and
Yeah.
um,
Well, the
yeah,
quality of the music was there. Like it was something that invited you in. You could take it on its surface level and laugh at the song titles and dismiss it if you wanted. But when you drop the needle down on the record, it was like, oh, this is really sophisticated. I mean, you guys were really good at what you did. It was immaculately produced. I mean, it had, again, the early records had that, raw feel, I guess. I hate using the word raw, but it was
we need to
in
talk about that.
comparison to the later stuff.
We should talk about that. again, we kind of got drawn away from that before. Basically, so all of our early equipment was mostly analog. We didn't have a sampler until the third album
Hmm.
at all. Well, actually, we did have these really, really cheap samplers that you literally, they were almost like a child's toy, um, which sampled for about like a second and a half or whatever. We used to,
Yeah.
sometimes play live little
Hmm.
one shot samples off of those, but they were literally like
I
a
think that's
plastic
what
toy.
bands like De La Soul did. Like that's how they made 3 Feet High and Rising. They had one of those like capture a sample, and it had like a second that you could capture.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Well, that's amazing. Well, so we and basically what happened was is the first two mixing desks that we had were very ropey, dodgy, and what we did was we decided quite quickly, like we because we started off, we were trying to sort of make things sound as best as we could, and and observe the rules of production that were established, and then we suddenly realised that we had all this extraneous hiss and noise and sort of detritus coming
Hmm.
through.
Hmm.
So what we decided to do was just turn it up. It's like we can't get rid of this, so why don't we actually just like shove it right up as loud as
Yeah.
why don't we amplify it? So
Yeah.
you get tracks like Agnostic Stomp, Punk's Not
Yes.
Dead.
Punk's not dead. Yep.
If you get the very beginning of that, for instance,
Yeah.
it's just there's just all that noise there, and that's
Yeah.
us amplifying and gaining everything up, basically.
I'm so glad you're mentioning this because this is why I love that album. Is like you can hear you guys in the studio. You know,
Yeah,
that was a really unique thing. Like you could, there was a human being behind this music.
definitely. Yeah,
Yeah. Yep.
there's bits in that song, right, where it kind of goes to this almost like gabba drum pattern. It goes doof, 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 doof,
Yeah.
doof. Well,
Yep.
that was me actually. That was a mistake. I was running that track, and I switched to the wrong drum pattern. I was supposed to have gone to another one that would have flowed more seamlessly with the drums that were already in the track, even
Yeah.
though they're really raw.
Yeah.
But that really heavy boom, boom,
Yeah.
boom, boom bit, that was a mistake. And
Oh
then
no.
it was like after I did it like the first time, it was just like let's keep
Yeah.
that in. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? We would do stuff that would make us laugh, like when we were doing certain tracks. We'd think
Right.
it was hilarious, and it's
Well,
just
you
like,
hear that
let's
a
keep
lot
it.
with musicians. Like they go into the studio and they're like, we didn't even plan on this, but it was a happy
Yeah,
little accident. How
yeah.
long did it take you to make You Fuckers Fuck? Do you remember?
It was probably put together over just probably about 6 months or something like that
Oh,
of
okay.
making lots and lots of tracks, and then just deciding which ones we wanted to put on the record.
Hmm.
Um, some of them still really like fond of and attached to. Lots of memories attached to so many of the tracks as well. Like because we were living it at the time. We didn't work. No one was studying at university. No one was. We none of it. We just did Conemelt full time up until around Stick or Brick City when that went off to university. Um,
Okay.
so that kind of changed things a little bit.
Hmm.
But even then, what we used to do is me and Grant would start something and then sort of wait for that to come back at the weekend and then sort of say, look, can you add something to this? What do you think of it? Do you want to
Yeah.
have a jam on that? Other times me and Grant, we wouldn't hold ourselves back. We'd finish a track. A lot of the tracks, actually, they aren't always by the three of us together. So like Agnostic Stomp is me on my own. It's the first
Oh,
track I ever did on my own.
oh,
Uh,
nice.
Yeah, yeah. Although Grant actually turned up just in time to do the kind of there's a searing noise. It goes woo, and
Mhm.
that was Grant. So yeah, he got in there. But all of the sequences, the drums and everything in the mix and everything, I was my first attempt. And it doesn't loop in 4/4 time because I didn't know
No.
how to get the sequencer to do that.
Hmm.
I was so inexperienced at programming the stuff because they've been doing it up until that stage.
Well, that song's
Um,
definitely the grimiest, if you will, song on the album, and it's awesome. But and it's at the beginning too, so it kind of sets the stage. Like if this is where we're heading. It's that was actually leads me to one of the questions I had. Like, how did you three work together? Like, it sounds like it
Okay.
was just kind of a fluid thing. Like, someone might have a bass line, and someone else might have a drum loop, or one person will have everything. Like, how does that work? I've always
Well,
been curious about this.
okay. Well, a lot of the time it would be a question of, we might turn up one day and I might go, yeah, I fancy programming some drums today. So I'd start like playing around with the drum machine, and while I'm doing that, Nat's on a synth, and Grant's Grant was generally more of the kind of the more uh, the more industrial of all of us. He liked to play around with stuff, so he'd be messing around with shortwave radios, or his 4-track and tapes that he'd made, and he'd be sort of blending them or gating them through synthesizers. Gating is like opening and closing it rhythmically,
Hmm.
filtering tapes through synths and things like that,
Hmm.
and putting out all these weird little like, because we used to just buy like funny little odd bits of old hi-fi equipment and things that you could sort of bastardize and use
Right.
in different ways.
Mm.
Like we had this funny little reverb unit which was made by Realistic, had about
Mm.
like 3 knobs on the front. It was really hard to sort of control, but it added a certain kind of uh, unusual sort of sound to things that you put through it. And
Sure.
but he was very much he was a bit of a you know out with the soldering iron kind of guy. He was
Yeah.
he was like to play around and experiment with things.
Yeah.
So a lot of the kind of more the odder, not all of them by any means, but a lot of the more odder sounds that you might hear in some of our stuff might well be Grant crafting those off in his corner.
Okay.
Me and Nat generally would exchange roles quite a bit musically. Um, so yeah, it generally worked that way. But then one day Nat would take the drum machine home, a pair of headphones, and program some drums and come in and then go, "What do you think of these drums?" I'd be like, "Yeah, that's wicked."
Nice.
So then we jump on that. Or I yeah, there's a lot to say, man, because we started off doing it all in parents, houses, in bedrooms in our parents' houses,
Hmm.
until they couldn't handle it anymore.
Hmm.
And I found a room out the back of a dance record shop that opened up in our town, the first dance specialist record shop that opened up in about 1993. And me being a DJ as well, I was straight in there, got to know everybody, and then one day the owner invited me out the back for a spliff, and
Hmm.
we're standing around out the back, and I'm nosing about. There's this empty room out the back, and I said, "What are you doing with this room, then, Spence?" He's like,
Hmm.
"Oh, I don't know. I haven't really thought about it." And I was like, "I don't suppose I could hire this off you, like 50 quid a week or whatever it was,
Yeah. Yeah.
and we could use it and it was out the back of a shop, um, and it was built onto the back as well, so it had nothing above it. And we had our own kit. We could come in at the back. We could come in through the back door. They had a door that kept the shop separate. They could lock.
Hmm.
So security wise, they didn't have any worries, about people wandering into the store and nicking things, or not us, but say we had mates there or whatever. But
Right.
then we got the keys, and then we set up our first studio in there. The picture on the back of "You Fuckers Fuck" is taken there,
And
and
you got a spliff in your mouth too in that photo. Yeah.
I hate to burst the bubble, but
Oh.
I think that was just a cigarette, man.
Oh, was it? Oh.
It just looks like everybody assumes it's a split, and of course,
Yeah.
we all
Yeah.
love a toad, so it may as well be. But don't
Okay.
actually think
I
it was.
apologize for thinking that. I did. I've always.
No, not at all. No, please don't. No, no, no. I don't mind. It's just that I feel bad because everybody makes that assumption, and I hate to
Yeah.
let people down. We were
Well,
all just
the
smoking.
music is so out there. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, we were all into drugs and stuff. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah. Right.
We were young. We were experimenting, but where we were, we couldn't get our hands on any kind of upmarket drugs. I mean, they were there if you wanted them. If you things like smack were about, but we didn't
Yeah.
go there because we saw what it was doing to the people that were into that stuff.
Yeah.
But as far as like LSD, mushrooms and amphetamines. You know, that
Yeah.
was all. That was all on the table. You know,
Yeah.
not like none of us had like issues. Well, I mean,
Outside the,
Grant was a self-professed hedonist. I mean,
yeah.
he subscribed to hedonism at that time, and
Yeah.
so he didn't hold back. That was fine. But me and Nat, we would pick our we were a bit more in control. We'd pick our moments, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But,
Well, and you guys weren't like you didn't have the level of fame like say Andy did. I remember Andy doing interviews. I think it was the NME, which take that for what you will. But you know, Andy in the early days, he just said he would seem to just say whatever was on his mind, and it got him in
yeah,
trouble. He had to
yeah.
back off for a few years, but anyway, yeah,
Yeah, I mean that lifestyle. I mean, it did exist. You know, it was going
yeah,
on. I mean, when we used to go up to London and sort of see how things were up there, then yeah. I mean, the thing, E's were like 20 quid a pop. You know,
yeah.
back down our way, and they
Wow.
weren't that easy to get. And
Back
you
then
know,
they were 20.
yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah, yeah. When we first tried to get them, yeah. And the thing is, but we would just naively think, oh well, we'll take a bit of acid and speed. It must be about the same. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Just be happy with that. But that again, it was very much a lo-fi, version of it all that we sort of created in our small
Yeah,
town.
that's, and lo-fi is a tricky term too because it doesn't suggest that you guys worked any less. I mean, like the music is really full, you know, there's a lot going on. It's very sophisticated. So, yeah, I hope when I say lo-fi, that's not an insult because it's very complicated, intricate music, especially
It
on
says on the it says on the labels of "You Fuck as Fuck." I'll bring this to your attention. It says "Rocking the Lo-Fi Shit into the Next Millennium."
Yep.
We were proudly lo-fi. This was the thing. We as I said before, all of our gear for the first two albums was really on the brink of packing up, or it was very very cheap, or it was bought off a geezer down the pub after bits didn't work or whatever.
Hmm.
And So we were always having to sort of use things that weren't quite fit for purpose.
Hmm.
Like our drum machine, our first drum machine was just the Leasis drum machine. It was cheap, it was budget.
Yeah.
We would have loved to have had a 909 or an 808, but you know what? It's just as well we didn't,
Hmm.
because we wouldn't have worked as hard to sort
Hmm.
of try to get things that were our impressions of.
Yeah. Well,
Like
and
we
you
never had a free. We all of our acidy sounding stuff was never a 303. We couldn't afford a 303 even back then. So what we had were these Roland MC 202s,
oh, no kidding. Okay.
and we had two of those. You see, so
Oh, okay.
yeah, yeah,
Well,
and
I
then we
would have
used to
never
put
guessed that.
right, and then we put them through guitar distortion pedals to
Ah,
give them. We used to use loads of guitar pedals as well,
yeah.
um, and things like that.
Well, that's what you guys did to my ears. It was punk music, really. I mean, because really, again, ignoring the sound that we all assume is punk, to me, the original idea of punk was a bunch of people not having a fucking clue what they're doing and
Yeah,
working with what they had and
yeah,
coming up with something compelling.
yeah,
And that's what Conemelt did, really.
yeah, yeah. I mean, like, it was a surprise to us, like a lot of the time when we would finish tracks. Sometimes we'd just go,
Yeah,
I think this is all. Is this all right?
yeah,
Like we would look and go, is this good? I
yeah,
think it could be. I think this is good. Is this good?
yeah.
Um, like one of my favourite sort of, if you don't mind me, sort of
No,
launching into a few
no, please do.
self not congratulatory, celebratory things. But
No,
if
celebrate
you
all you
listen,
want, my friend.
well, if you listen to the end of side two of Confuse and Destroy is the end of a track that I personally really love, which is Joys of Surface Noise, and
Yes.
it gets to the end.
Pulling it out. Here it is right here for peeps.
I
This is
like
from
that one. Yeah,
On Emissions. There's a
yeah,
shot of you in
yeah,
there somewhere. I guess is that
yeah.
you?
That's Grant. There's Nat in the middle and me on the left there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
This is a great album.
I must admit, yeah, you know, yeah, it was one of my favourite things we ever did
Great
for sure.
album. Great album.
Yeah, because it's just sort of in the sweet spot really
Hmm.
between the sort of more the
Yep.
naivety of the first records
Yeah, it's
and
the
the
bridge. It's the bridge.
sophistication of the latter ones,
Hmm.
or the growing
You guys
sophistication.
are finding your footing on that
Yeah,
album. Yeah.
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 Um, but so the end of side two, you can hear the end of that track. Then if you start side three, it's actually a recording
Hmm.
of us listening back to the end of the track you've just heard. So you hear the track again, but there's this kind of like, but it's being played through speakers in a room. What it
Yeah.
was is Grant used to carry around like a dictaphone tape recorder, and he would covertly record things all the time, like conversations people had on buses or this, that, the God knows, whatever.
Yeah.
And he'd recorded us recording the track. And then if you listen to the start of side three, the very beginning of that side is the end of the previous track, and then it stops, and then there's us all having a discussion about how fucking
Yeah.
much we like it. It's called Big Up the Conemelt.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's us. Like, I mean, I don't know how many people have kind of broke the, what do you call it, the fourth wall, or you know, it's like
Well,
just,
I knew it was you, but I didn't know what you guys were talking about. So
yeah,
yeah.
we're saying, oh yeah, fucking, oh that's
Yeah.
great, that is, yeah, you know,
Yeah.
there's me saying, oh, it's not like Wallop, but it's sort of like hearkening back to Wallop, but
Right.
it's in a different style or something like that.
Oh,
And
so that's you saying that?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no,
But
I definitely remember
it's
that.
that kind of thing of trying to kind of, we were almost kind of not sending ourselves up, if you know what I mean by that, but
Yeah.
we were kind of really trying to kind of like expose ourselves in a
Well, like
way,
you said, like breaking the fourth wall.
demystify things, you know.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No. No, that makes total sense. And because you guys have such like a obviously a strong sense of humor, I think of I mean, being in England, you might not know, but like TV shows in America, like the David Letterman show, like he was known
Yeah,
for breaking that fourth wall. Uh,
yeah,
so yeah, that makes total sense to me because
yeah,
humor was a big part of what you guys did, obviously. Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah. I agree with you. This is I hope people find these too because these have not been reissued at all. And this is another reason why I wanted to make that initial video on YouTube because you don't see these records or digital and not that I know of.
Yeah.
Uh, these aren't
By the
easy.
way, I just want to say, yeah, I really appreciate you making that video because I came across it by complete and utter. But you know, it might sound a bit strange, but every once in a while, and it's not something I do regularly, but I'll type Comel into YouTube because
I'm glad you did.
just to see if anyone's uploaded any of our stuff, uh, because I suppose there's a part of me thinking, I wonder if anybody out there has felt that it warranted, you know. And then you find someone's uploaded the track from one album or another album or an EP, and you think, oh, that's interesting, they picked that one, you know. And it's just having a little look around, nose about.
I'm
And then
glad
all of a
you did.
sudden, I was looking down and I saw your thumbnail and saw the title, and I thought, no, right, no way.
You
There's someone actually talking about us in any
did. Some demented
detail.
bastard in America made a video.
No,
Yeah.
I was so honestly, it took me. I couldn't even watch it the whole way through the first time I watched it. I had to stop because I was getting quite emotional watching it
Hey, I'm
because
glad. I'm glad.
well, because the thing is, we didn't honestly, we didn't get very much acclaim in England at all.
No.
Uh, so so by the time we sort of wound it down, there was a bit of, because we put so much of ourselves into it, there was actually a bit of like pain, like when I felt like we
Hmm.
couldn't go any further. There was a bit of sadness there, you know what I mean, about it. That
Yeah.
we'd had all of that sort of energy and drive, and
Hmm.
inspiration, and you know, it had been a very it was life changing for me. It
Hmm.
was
I'm
and
sure.
to work so closely with two friends for a number of years and do as much as we did was something, you know.
Yeah.
You know, I'll never ever sort of forget. You know,
I can
it,
imagine. Yeah, and
it,
that's the reason I do that channel. Like I have thousands of I started DJing back in the early '90s, and I have thousands of records, and
that
I
like
can I can sit there and do Autechre videos all day, and I've done an Aphex Twin video, and I did a Weatherall video too. But I
yeah
got to a point where I'm like, you know what? There's an inundation of all these bigger names on YouTube. I want to start talking about these bands who aren't not only getting talked about now, but didn't get talked about then. I never saw a
yeah
single Conemelt interview ever.
no
I don't know if you guys ever did one, but I subscribed to Jockey Slut. I don't remember one time that I saw you guys in there. I don't know if they were asking you. I assume you guys would have done it if you were asked.
yeah we would have done. Basically, we have nine mentions. The main place that supported us was actually in there was a weekly national newspaper called the NME, the New Musical Express,
Yeah.
and it had after the dance sort of boom, they had 3 pages in there called the Vibes section,
Yeah, I
which
remember
was
that.
edited by a guy called Ben Wilmot,
Yep, yep,
and
Wilmot.
he used to big us up as often as he could,
I remember
and
that, and he introduced me to a lot of shit. I
yeah,
subscribed to the NMA too. I found, I might have first heard Aphex Twin by one of
yeah.
his recommendations. Yeah.
Oh, I bet he was very, very into Mike Paradinas as well and stuff like
Oh,
that.
yeah. And
Yeah.
he definitely had a great taste in music. Yeah, I do remember. I still have those old NMEs too. And I remember he mentions you guys, but you never did an interview, right?
Uh,
Or did
that's
you?
funny. He may have felt at the time, right? Because this is the thing: the compilation "Sticky Whippet" is actually on a label called Spiky, and that's Ben Wilmot's label. So
Oh,
he may have kind of felt as well. I think he may have felt a little bit like, yes, yeah. I did that sleeve. Yeah. I did all of that. Yeah, I did that. Yeah.
I covered this in the video, but this is all
Uh,
like Cone Melt peeps, and there's one Weatherall track.
that's right.
And that's
Yeah.
it. And it's a fucking great album.
Well, there's a couple of there's one track on there called "All Over Hairpiece," which was only on a compilation, so that needed to be on there.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It's got one side of 2 days by Corridor as well.
Yeah, the Corridor, Floating Bloke, which is you guys, Secret Order, which is you
Me
guys.
and that floating bloke. Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, Meek is Weatherall. It says E
yeah.
Prog, whatever that means, inside joke.
Emmett Prague. He gave us that. I think I was cheeky back in the day as well. Do you know what I mean? We would occasionally like. I remember saying to him one day because obviously he knew we'd started New Ground uh, because we launched with well we did Corridor 2 days and then we did the Comel EP.
Hmm.
Um, but anyway, I think his release was the one after us. But basically, yeah, I just said to him, "Oh, come on, then you're always banging on about how you're down with the fucking kids and that.
Yeah.
You know, why don't you do a release for our label?" And he was
Hmm.
like, "Yeah, all right, I
Hmm.
will." You know,
Yeah.
and went away and then came back with Glowing Trees. So
It,
the 12 inch of Glowing Trees is very very nice record.
it is. There's
Very moody.
it's yeah. I don't know if I made a Weatherall video a few years ago after he died, and I hold that record up, and it's just a plain white sleeve. It has a sticker of a scientist like twiddling some knobs.
It's actually a picture of an old. I think it might be from an old recording studio. In fact, it's called Meek as a tribute to Joe Meek,
Joe Meek, right?
which is why it's got that almost kind of like theremin style
It
hovering
does. Yeah.
melody.
Yep.
Yeah. It's that.
It's a very 50s. I mean, obviously it's techno, but it's got that Joe Meek,
Yeah.
almost.
Johnny Remember Me. Do you know that song?
Yes, yes,
Johnny Remember Me.
yep,
It's but that's why he called himself Meek on that.
yeah.
That was done with Jags and Gary as well. It's the three of them.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and
Yeah.
for those who don't know, Joe Meek, if I were to compare him to anyone, maybe Raymond Scott, he was known
Yeah.
to, he was an early electronic, tinkler, if you will. Not as, well, I don't know, was he as big as Raymond Scott? Raymond Scott did a lot of jingles for commercials.
Yeah.
Joe Meek wasn't on that level.
Meek was big in England because he was doing sort of pop productions that were getting into the UK charts, but they all had sort of strange sort of textures or reverbs or
Yeah,
and he was speeding tapes up and slowing them down, and he was doing all kinds of experimenting basically,
yeah,
because his studio was in a flat. How he ended up, do you? He was
yeah, yeah,
he went sort of psychotic from overuse of amphetamines and
yes,
shot his landlady, then killed himself. Yeah.
yep, yep. And
Think
that
she
was
came
in.
round for he wasn't getting the work anymore. It was all starting to dry up, and he was getting more and more crazy. And I think she came round for the rent.
And he just,
It's so sad,
there.
you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
such a real, again, it's realness, like
And we can look back on it in hindsight, but these people have these, in his mind, he probably was coming up with all this mind-bending shit, which he was, but the world wasn't prepared for it. And how many stories do we have like this, where
I'll tell you
people,
who I compare him to actually. Although not so much for the electronic disc, but Phil Spector, essentially.
oh, yeah,
He was a bit like an English Phil Spector,
yeah,
because he had lots of different artists. He had a guy called Hines who had loads of hits in England.
hmm,
Screaming Lord Sutch, who was a bit of a novelty,
right,
kind of horror based kind of, who had
yeah,
a single
yeah,
called Jack the Ripper, and but then he had the Tornadoes, who were like an instrumental band, who did a
right,
track called Telstar,
hmm,
which was named after uh, a rocket or a
yeah,
space, a space uh, vehicle of some
yeah,
description.
shuttle, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
Telstar. Yeah,
Yeah, and I don't think we need to explain to anyone who Phil Spector is. If we do, go figure it out on your own. Phil Spector is
yeah,
a yeah, we all know Phil Spector. Yeah,
yeah.
no, it's let's you want to talk about God and Hackney? Some
Oh yeah,
music,
can do if you want.
and
Yeah.
we can keep talking about Conemelt or I mean,
Well, I'm just trying to think if I think one of the things that I would probably want to say is that I don't even know if you know all of our associated pseudonyms and records that we put out. I wonder whether you would, do you know the Cartridge Family EPs on Subvert Records, of
no,
which there's three.
no,
Uh,
Subvert? No, I have no idea. No idea.
Soul Traders, Soul Traders. That was a
No.
one-off single. Singles Network.
I need something to write down. I need something to write with.
I'll send you a little list of
Would you?
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, I
there's stuff on
know.
there's
Oh, go
stuff
ahead.
on Disco that people don't know is basically Comel related, and often it could be, or like we did the Mile High Club Tracks EPs as well, with like under names like New Rubber Lung.
That I know. Yeah.
Right, Good Lover Brothers was us.
Yes.
Also, there's Leg Action, Kid
Like
Acid. I did a record as Kid Acid.
I know
There's
Kid Acid. I know Kid Acid. The ones that come to my mind right off the bat are, Panache and I guess the older
Flavor
stuff.
Flippers.
Yes. Yes. I didn't know God and Hackney. I will tell you that. And then I was a little embarrassed when I went and looked it up. I was like, God damn, you guys have like 3 albums out. How the hell did I miss this? Which is,
Two albums out,
oh,
two albums,
two.
but we've got a third one. Um, it's coming out soon. We've got a 7-inch about to come out actually.
This reminds me too, if you could send a thank you to Nathaniel, he sent me a care package. And I didn't know how to get a hold of him. And they
Okay.
they they came from California. Is he in California or is that
Yeah,
just
he's in LA. Yeah, he's in
yeah?
LA. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
No,
yeah,
I got a care package, so thank you very much.
yeah.
I wanted to
He's a
thank
top
him.
guy. I was his best man, at his
Oh,
wedding and
nice.
that
Do you,
out there.
where did you guys meet? Did you guys go to school or did you meet post school?
Yeah, because we sort of passed over that. Well, basically, so we were in Tunbridge. There was a local pub where all the sort of freaks, local dropouts, weirdos, all congregated, basically.
Hmm.
And I had a load of friends there. He was living in. Him and Grant had met each other and were living in a town 4 or 5 miles up the road, but it was even smaller and it didn't really have any kind of scene at all. So they would come into Tunbridge on the weekend, and I still hadn't really met them. But Grant had I had a bit of a mad haircut at the time. I can't remember, it was pre dreads, I think. And Grant had like a shaved head and then this really massive fringe that came down, bit John Balance,
Yeah.
early John Balance kind of look.
Yeah.
Uh,
He was way into
uh,
coil, I assume.
and because Grant was already, again, well, this was the thing. So I was chatting to someone down the pub, and they were like, "Have you met Grant?" And I was like, "No, no, I don't think I have." And they're like, "Because he likes all that weird industrial stuff, what you like, all that
Yeah.
throbbing gristle and psychic
Yeah.
TV, coil, and you
Yeah.
know, early SPK and Nurse with Wound,
Or even,
White House,
yeah.
like,
In the
well, we were into all of that.
yeah.
Um, so they hooked me up with, literally, it was just like, he's sat over there, you come and meet him. Do you know what I mean? I went over and I saw this guy. I was like, how have
Yeah.
I not met this? Because especially once we sat down and started talking, it
Mhm.
was just like, how do we not meet sooner? Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
we've got so much in common.
Yeah.
And that was with him. And that was a few years younger than me and Grant. So
Mhm.
that's how we all met, through music, through industrial music.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
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 Well, that might be a topic of conversation too, industrial stuff. I think you mentioned when we were emailing, what was it Knights of Ebb? I'm trying to remember. I
Yeah.
think Knights of Ebb video. And
Yeah.
yeah, that was that late 80s period. I mean, it made total logical sense to me to kind of when techno started, it was that same kind of energy. It's like, oh, it's
Yeah.
like Knights of Ebb, except it's less abrasive, maybe. I don't know, but
Yeah.
yeah, it was carrying on maybe from more of a pop angle than what
Yeah.
obviously Coil or Throbbing Gristle. Although Throbbing Gristle, I mean, they had plenty of pop angles from the very beginning anyway.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, like, quite a lot of people. I mean, like, same with Conemelt, in the sense that, we could do something that's quite abrasive, but then if a melody came up,
Yeah,
we didn't run away screaming.
yeah,
We didn't have to bury everything under a layer of aggression. It was
yeah,
like, no, let it all flow, yeah, naturally. But
yep,
because but well, the way I see it, I suppose, is that kind of sort of EBM, kind of,
yeah,
like Front 242, sort of,
yeah,
Belgian,
yeah.
kind of stuff. I mean, there's some great bands from back then that people don't know so well as well. I like this lot called Clinic with two
Oh
Ks.
yeah. Are they still
Yeah. Sorry.
are they still around, Clinic?
I think they did some. I think they actually did. I think I saw something on YouTube, from a few years ago, where they would still go out and gig occasionally and stuff.
I saw them a couple times live, and you probably know this, but their
I
whole
never. I mean, they never got to the UK, as far as I'm aware. They might have played
oh,
in England. I don't know. I don't
they're
know.
fun to see live. They dress up as doctors. They have masks on, and you know
Yeah.
they put forth
Oh
this.
no, not Clinic the band.
Oh,
Clinic with K's, not C's.
oh, okay, no, sorry.
So this is electronic stuff from like about 83, 4, 5, around there.
Oh, sorry, no.
Nah, yeah, yeah. Clinic, the band, Comel actually played a show with them,
Oh, you
which
did?
was very strange. Yeah, it was check this for a lot. We played with some really interesting bands. Did you ever hear of Add N to X?
Oh, of course, yeah.
Yeah, we played with them. We played with
Okay.
Clinic, Add N to X. We played with Panasonic, they were called
Oh,
at the time,
yeah.
not Pansonic, but Panasonic, when they were first out and before they got sued by the company Panasonic and had to
Oh, I
change
didn't
to
know that.
Panasonic.
Ah,
Yeah,
okay,
fucking hell, they were incredible. They
okay.
were fucking mad. Like, what they were doing was out of this world. Yeah, we played with loads of really cool people. Psychic Warriors of Gaia, they were brilliant.
Oh, I remember them. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, they
they
were
were.
kind of a hard band I mean, I hate genre tags anyway, but I mean they had plenty of techno stuff, but it was all kind of based on that industrial experimental stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but they did a couple of EPs. There's one called Obsidian. It's
Yeah.
it's really beautiful
Is
record. I
that the one
love
with
it.
it's like one track's like 20 minutes long?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's like incense floating,
Yeah.
in the air. Sort of. I mean, yeah, in the best way. I mean, it says something on there like, it uses obviously Psychic Warriors of OV. There's a lot of references to the Psychic TV kind of,
Yeah.
thing. They're obviously
Mhm.
inspired by that.
Yeah.
And it mentions ritual, the word ritual on it somewhere.
Hmm.
And that kind of music, that sort of extended track and stuff, it is great music to sort of fill up a space in a certain way.
Yeah.
I really love it. I really love it.
Yeah.
There's a good. Well, anyway, but they live, because they then went on and did a double pack called, I think it was called Psychic Rhythms, and it was much harder,
Hmm. Yeah.
like polyrhythmic drum tracks.
Yeah.
And,
And then
and
that's
by the
kind of
time,
how they ended too, right? I remember them.
yeah,
What was it, Crack? Remember the single Crack?
yeah,
Yeah.
that's a great record, man. That's really good. I just saw my copy of that the other day, and I was like, I'm gonna have to listen to that again, because I
Yeah.
remember there being some quite special stuff on that record,
Yeah.
quite unusual, quite in its own, in its own field.
Totally. Yeah, like it would be easy to just lazily say it's techno, but it's a hell of a lot more than that, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And they were, yeah, they were scratching an itch that no other band really was. It was I mean, I'm trying to think of any artists that would I would, that were kind of doing that industrial techno thing in the 90s. I felt like maybe bands in the 80s, maybe even Adrian Sherwood was trying to
yeah,
marry that
yeah,
a little bit.
yeah, yeah.
Um, which, by the way, I think we mentioned in,
Muslim gauze. I mean, they, fucking hell. I mean,
yeah,
I've only got, like, I think one record on vinyl, because I mean it's quite hard to collect Muslim
yeah.
gauze stuff.
Have you guys, okay, this reminds me. Have you guys thought about trying to reissue Cone Melt stuff, or
All
is that,
right, okay. So this is a bit of a bit of a moot point, in as much as I was responsible for the archiving of our stuff, and I've been I've always taken this approach to life, that I just basically didn't do it properly. There's like a box of loads of DAT tapes. Um, I don't know what's on any of them. They're all really badly labelled. Um, they may or may not play. It's an overwhelming task to sort of,
mm,
because most of these are about 3 hour long tapes and stuff, And we
yeah,
did so many multiple takes, and we did so much unreleased stuff, and
mm-hmm,
there's all these, so much, and it basically, it's a mess, and it would require someone to go through all of these DAT tapes and see what's on them and see what's actually retrievable.
mm,
As for the masters of a lot of the stuff we did with other labels, they would have held on to those,
yeah,
and I don't know if they still exist or they don't.
huh,
It'd be hard to find out. Ben Wilmot, I spoke to him because we did the two Mile High Club Tracks records,
mm-hmm,
and the Sticky Whippet thing, and I think there's a possibility we might be able to get some of that stuff back out, or possibly, because the Mile High Club Tracks 2 has gone up in value a lot.
mm-hmm,
Seems to be quite sought after. In fact, quite a lot of the records on Discogs are actually creeping up. Not so much the ill stuff, but that ill record stuff, but that even that a little bit. But
mm-hmm.
certainly, a lot of the pseudonym projects, and the earlier stuff, and the emission stuff, is gradually seems to be sort of climbing up a
Well,
bit.
people reach out to me
Yeah,
privately when I do these videos, and I've definitely got a couple of people to buy some Comel records. I don't know if they're going to Discogs or not, but they reach. This is why I love doing this channel more than anything else, is just introducing people to music that they wouldn't necessarily have ever heard.
yeah,
Like especially Knights or Ebb fans. It's
yeah,
interesting. We talk about Knights or Ebb, people who are Knights or Ebb fans, and even Skinny Puppy fans.
yeah.
They watch the Conemelt video and they're reaching out to me, going, "Oh shit, this is great. How have I never heard of it?" Well, that's
Well,
why I
that's
did the
cool. That's
video.
really cool. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
they need to
And you
hear
see,
about
but going back to that sort of, whether or not we could reissue things, that it's a task. I do actually think in fact, then there was a bit of a chat with a quite a big distribution, but sort of large underground distribution company. I won't name the name, but with a really, really good reputation. It's a big size company whilst being independent. Uh, and they actually have their own labels, and they have access to a pressing plant and stuff. And Ben went and spoke to them on my behalf, and said, you know, if you notice that there's a bit of interest in some of this old stuff that Conemelt did and blah blah, might you be interested in, you
Hmm.
know, would
Yeah.
you be interested in distributing any of this stuff if it got repressed?
Yeah.
And they said, yeah, definitely, there's a
Oh,
conversation to be had,
cool.
but but it all kind of rests on my shoulders a bit. I
Mm.
suppose we could remaster some of the albums from CD versions,
Yeah. What about digital? I mean, how that would
but
that
I think we'd have to put it back into analog first. We'd have
infinite
to take a
compression?
CD, put it through an analog process, and a genuine analog process, and then remaster it again back to fucking digital. Kind of
Yeah.
thing. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, like you said, I guess yeah, it all depends on how much energy you want to put into it. Yeah. Because,
Well, it's not so much that I don't care. I do care, but
sure. Yeah.
it's just that,
The records are out
yeah,
there though. That's part of the fun of it, right? Like, you remember when we could go through a record bin and find a record and it was like a treasure, and now
yeah,
everything is so easily accessible. It almost takes some of the mystique out of it.
I agree. I mean, but I mean, the problem for me is that I think we could actually make that. Like I said, there's a lot of associated stuff that people still don't even really
Yeah.
haven't even really uncovered. So, but in terms of being able to like compile, like, I mean, you can make some pretty interesting compilations out of our stuff. I know that much.
Hmm.
If you just took select tracks from
Oh
here
yeah.
and bits and bobs from there, there could be some really, really interesting albums to be made from that. But
Part of why I did this video series I do on my records is that I've got my turntable right next to me here, and
yeah,
I'm recording my vinyl to digital so I can get it into my cloud system.
yeah.
And Cone Melt was my project this summer. So I basically
Oh, right.
I recorded everything, and I make my own playlists, and that's the fun of it. It's like, I think this song's better here, and I'm gonna put that over here, and yeah, obviously some of it's nostalgia, or maybe most of it, but this is
Yeah.
the music of my youth. I want to hear it.
Oh,
And there's so many people that are liking it, Ash. Just to let you know, again, people are reaching out to me, and they had no fucking clue who Comel was. So
yeah.
to me, if it was just one person, that makes it worth it. It's like, good. I'm glad I've done my work
Well,
here.
genuinely, I mean, like, I am just really stoked to have an opportunity to talk a little bit about it. But but as I say, I mean, it's literally just just what you've done with that video. Okay, we're doing this now. I hope it's interesting for people to listen to. If you put this up, I mean, I hope it's actually an interesting discussion. I
I
mean,
hope
it
so.
feels a bit weird to sort of be. I mean, I feel like I don't want to come across as egotistical or something, or like big-headed. Do you know what I mean? Because in England we've got this
No.
real thing about you don't big up yourself or your
I,
accomplishments. You do the opposite. You play it down.
I hear you. Well,
And
I wrestle with this with my own videos too. It's like, does the internet need another white dude talking about his opinions on the internet? I don't think so. But
well, I do. I need
see,
you doing what you're doing.
there you go. There you go. And it's people like yourself that make me realize, like, yeah, I do need to do this because it's education, really, at the end of the day. And I'm a teacher, so this is something that's dear to my heart. And music is, I love all art, but music is the most important thing. So
Yeah, and the thing is, mate, it totally comes across, and
cool. Okay,
I
good.
respect that because there's, really what you'll be appealing to, I think, is kindred spirits. Other people
Yeah.
that are sat there
Hmm.
that are having similar thoughts and feelings about
Right.
their music that they love, and they enjoy seeing somebody like present it clearly passionate about it and with a degree of intelligence as well,
Well, thank you. Yeah. Well,
and
thank you.
considering.
Dude, you have no idea how much it made my day to hear from you. Because,
Hmm.
again, I told a few of my friends that I heard from you, and they're like, "What? What? Are you going to talk to him?" I was like, "Yeah, I think so. I think he's into it." But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people, they look back at their music of their youth, like Nirvana or the Pixies, and that's fair enough. I like those bands, but to me, it was Conemelt, bands like Conemelt, and so this is huge, and yeah, the fact that my videos can reach you, who's literally halfway across the world, maybe not
Yeah.
quite that far, but yeah, it just reminds you it's a small world, man. Because 30 years or 25 years ago, to think that I would talk to members of Cone Melt, that was a pipe dream.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, no, I'm happy to do it. And again, I hope you get at least I hope you get some kind of reissuing action out there. I don't know whether it's digital or a physical copy. It sounds like it might be easier to do records than it would be digital.
Well, the thing is, we'd always want to do records because everything
Yeah.
that we've ever done, where possible, there's only ever been like a handful of tracks on compilations, perhaps, that didn't make it onto vinyl. But it was always absolutely paramount to us that it had to exist on vinyl foremost.
Yes.
And that goes for I've been running record labels myself over the last few years, putting out young artists and stuff as well. That's another conversation. And like God in Hackney, like we'll we're always thinking about the vinyl versions of everything. Everything else comes bit second to that.
Excellent.
That's. Did you get your copy then of Small Country Eclipse?
I did,
Do
and
you
I
like the
love
color?
it.
Do you like the coloured vinyl? Because I'm really pleased with the colour of the
Yeah.
vinyl.
I and I
Yeah.
I loved as always I love the cover uh
Mm.
the the cover of Cave Modern.
Oh yeah. Well, I've got a T-shirt with that on,
Oh, you
actually.
do? Oh shit,
Yeah,
man.
yeah. That kind of weird, grotesque man, isn't it? Am I
Yeah,
remembering right?
yeah. It looks like I mean, obviously it's a caveman, but it looks digitally altered, like to
Mm.
look blurry, to look more shitty than it look. I don't know if that was a purposeful thing. Whatever you meant, I was laughing. I thought it was really funny. And
Do you
the
know what? Andrew did a end of year chart the year that album came out
oh,
in some publication or other, and he put that album as his number one choice.
oh, he did?
Yeah, and we didn't. We had no clue that he'd even heard it.
Oh, that's
So
awesome. It's good.
yeah.
Well, this reminds me too, like the God in Hackney. I didn't know you were a drummer.
Mm.
It's very. I want to say jazz, but I don't
Yeah.
know. It's a lot more than that. But it made me wonder, like, what are your jazz influences? I mean, are they just pretty typical?
No, well, what happened with my drumming was, my early influences with drumming were all the sorts of things you might be able to imagine. And let me try and put this down. Sorry about this, mate.
No, no, you're fine. You're fine.
Um,
You're fine.
I'm trying to hide the. This place is an absolute tip. The room I'm in,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
it,
It's the
it's
same
it's
here.
it's so messy, mate. I
Oh,
mean,
I'm
no,
hiding all kinds of horrifying shit from you myself. So what's going on in this room is really ugly.
John, I'll show you some records. Can you see those?
Oh shit. Nice. Hell yeah, I can see them. Oh, look at that. They're leaning up against the shelf.
They're
Nice.
everywhere.
Yeah, man. Well,
Anyway, I've got a storage as well that's
good.
absolutely full of thousands of records.
That's what they
Um,
are. Yep.
and like the archiving of Conemelt, none of it's in order. It's all completely random.
Yep.
Anyway, what we talk about, yeah. So like your John Bonhams from Led Zepp and
Yeah. Oh
Ian
yeah.
Pace from Deep Purple,
Hmm.
uh, all these kinds of guys, and then my dad. I didn't have a brilliant relationship with him, but he pushed me towards drumming in a jazz orchestra locally. And I did, and it was all like Duke Ellington, Glenn Miller, that kind of stuff. And the band leader taught me to read drum music, and I could just pick it up, the swing and stuff, and I could do it. I could pull it off.
Hmm.
But a while after that, I actually was introduced to a guy who'd been a big session musician in the 60s. He'd done a lot of soundtrack work, did a lot of TV stuff. Also did quite a lot of ghost drumming on some quite big pop records back in the day as well. But there was a lot of that where the producers used to get musicians into play because they didn't think that the bands could play well enough themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So they would not actually play on their own records, right? It was
Hmm.
actually paid session musicians who
Yeah.
weren't able to sort of almost kind of go public with it and stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, he'd had a good career, um, and he started teaching me, and he brought a whole load of albums of his own vinyl records that he no longer particularly wanted, so he gave them to me.
Oh
And
shit.
in there was stuff like "In a Silent Way" by Miles Davis,
Oh gee. Like an original copy?
more or less, I think.
Yeah.
Also a live double album called Agata.
Oh.
He gave me, I mean, other stuff like jazz fusion stuff, like Weather Report and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But really, but I picked up things like Love Supreme by John Coltrane because I was just
Mm-hmm.
curious about the record and I wanted to know what it was like.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I like Pharaoh Saunders. I always say Saunders, but I think it's Sanders, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, I like, you know, that kind of and improvisation as well
Yeah.
in general.
Yeah.
And my approach to playing is very,
Yeah.
I don't play it the same way twice. Yeah, it's just it is what it
Yeah.
is. So
That's the kind of vibe I was hearing with God and Hackney, even maybe a little Thelonious Monk there in some moments, you know.
yeah, man, absolutely.
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
mean,
the range of influences again amongst the four musicians in God and Happy is ludicrous.
yeah.
It really is. Like we can sort of tap into quite a lot of different things. Dan is quite knowledgeable in like the avant-garde and sort of type music, and Andy's a goth. Um, no,
Mhm.
I mean we all love such
Yeah.
a broad, wide range of music that it again it sort of it manifests as
Mhm.
we collaborate really into
Yeah.
whatever it is that it is.
Yeah.
Same, same.
Do you ever have an itch to go back and make that cone melt kind of sound, like you and Nathaniel getting together and pulling Grant out and
Uh, I think these things. They're sort of for us to sort of go back in a fully electronic kind of way. If it happened, it would just have to happen somehow, sort of organically. I mean, and it could. I mean, I do visit that in America. Like a lot of the drums for the last album, Small Country Eclipse, were recorded in LA, and I mean, on the new album, actually, there's a track on there which happens to be just me and Nat, and I play drums, he plays bass, and then we're both on keyboards on it. I didn't even realise. I was so pleased. He sent me this track back, and he'd done all these keyboards, and there were these other kind of more like sort of kind of esoteric and slightly more um, uh, I don't know how to describe them, but these other keyboard sounds, And I said to him, I really like what you've done with all the keys, on the track and that. He's like, well, you do realise that some of that's you,
Mhm.
and I'm like, no, which bit? Not the bits like this, like that. And he's like, yeah, that's you, and I'm like, oh, fucking great. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I've been messing around with the synth, in the studio,
Yeah.
and he'd been recording it, and then I'd kind of forgotten that I'd not really drawn any conclusions from it. I thought
Yeah.
I do that a lot. I
Sure.
usually
Right.
dismiss what I've done immediately as
And
a
my
load of
que that question is unfair. I'm being selfish in my question there because, yeah, I get it. Like it's always in you. It's never going away. You guys made those beautiful records a long time ago, so it's always there. Um,
yeah.
yeah,
But the
times.
fact that it had both of us, it's just the two of us on this particular track, and both of us are playing keyboards on it. Was nice to realise that that's there. No
Yeah,
guitars on that track, so
yeah. Well, and
made
that's the
made
beautiful
things
thing too
nice.
about that old Conemelt stuff is it's timeless. And I didn't know that until I pulled it out of my storage earlier this year, and I've listened to it off and on. But it still sounds good. You know.
Cool. Well, again, it'd be hard for me to judge in certainly you know, there'll be lots of tracks that I'll hear and I'll be like, "Ooh, you know, really, is it? You know, still
Yeah.
have those kind of doubts.
Hmm.
Uh, but some of it, again, I still do like
And
and
it's
enjoy.
probably tough, you know, I'm sure it's tough for you guys to disassociate yourselves as listeners because you're so invested in it personally.
Yeah,
It's really not up to you to like it. It's up to people like myself. It's like that
yeah,
still sounds good, you know.
yeah.
And it does, yeah. So,
I was going to quickly say the reason why the later stuff sounds more sophisticated as well is because we finally got our hands on a decent mixing desk. So
oh
that
right.
kind of so it kind of it just cleaned things up a bit. And
Clean.
that
Cleaner
yeah,
is a better word. I wouldn't say it's more sophisticated. I would just say it's cleaner because your
yeah,
early stuff is very sophisticated. It's just
yeah,
recorded with more antiquated equipment, whereas
that's right.
later stuff, you know what I mean? Because you
Yeah,
guys, the details, maybe this is part of the glory of working with a couple of other guys, but there's so much shit going on those.
no. I
I mean,
think that was the thing though. Towards the end though, I think that was the thing that I started to worry about. Is like, have we overdone it? Have we pushed it too far? You know,
mm,
is it just is it too much now? But I can counter that with like still with the knowledge of say like on the last album there's like tracks like Magic Till which is a bit more restrained. Do you know what I mean? But
mhm.
there's a lot of tracks we did where it's almost like everything but we say in England everything but the kitchen sink. You
Yeah,
know, you've put everything in but the kitchen sink.
sure. Yeah, yeah.
Um, so yeah, and I think that was a kind of a bit of a natural thing was to, but even like you know, even like records like singles like Last the Ice and things, you know, it's like
Not
our
just pulling it out.
yeah, yeah, it's like our sort of disco-y record that the A side, and then Lovely Fella is Fella, you know, tribute to Fela Kuti,
Yep.
Big Toe Straightener, yeah, that's a funny one, yeah,
I mean, I remember laughing just looking at this, like, yeah, that's a Conemelt record. Look at that. But then you put the music on, it's like, man, this is good. Like it
yeah.
doesn't. The titles are funny, but there's nothing funny about the music. You know, it's very, very sophisticated stuff. Yeah.
Have you got Rocker's Ruin though? Have you got that? The free track 12-inch with Under the Hood, Sex
Oh yeah.
Gymnasium. Oh, you
Oh yeah.
got that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Wow. Well done.
mine's just a plain cover. I don't think that even has a picture cover. Mine
Doesn't
does.
have a picture cover, but it has. I think it has a drawing of us on the
It does
label.
on the label.
Yeah.
It's in
Yeah.
red. It's like a white
That's
label,
it.
and
That's
yeah.
it.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
a great record. Sex
Thanks.
Gymnasium. Yeah. Did you come up with the song titles? Was that your job?
Sex Gymnasium's mine. Um,
That's a good name for a
yeah.
YouTube channel, actually. Sex
Yeah.
Gymnasium. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
based around that track's based around a sample from The Only Way Is Up by Yaz. It was a
Oh
massive, massive pop tune in
right.
England.
I
There's a
do.
little,
Oh, go ahead.
there's a little voice. It's the bit where she goes, "Talk about the only way is up, baby." That's
Yeah.
looped in there, but
Oh, shit, I didn't.
no one noticed that. But
No.
like a lot of our samples are from like pretty audacious places, like Artificial Time Stretch Lady. The drums are the Smiths.
Oh
You know,
yeah.
yeah, it's the beginning of "It's Time the Tale Was Told." Reel Around the Fountain. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the drums are from the Smiths, just put onto 45, a 33 record, put onto 45.
Hmm. Another,
And
another great title, Flying Buttress, one of my favorites.
yeah, yeah, and that's got samples from loads of little grabs from old ska records, all that Ooga Booga Ooga and Ring Ding and all that, and
Yeah. Yeah.
oh, Ooda Baba Gal Gal Fever or whatever it is.
Right.
That's like an old 50s sort of rock and roll record.
Yeah, yeah. This reminds me too, like going back to Ministry and Adrian Sherwood a little bit. Like, was that
Yeah,
stuff you guys were listening to? Obviously, you must have, yeah?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, the other day I picked up another copy. I sell records, by the way. I'm a record dealer.
Oh, okay.
I picked up another copy on 12-inch of Work for Love.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. The US
You know,
one, there's
you're not a
different.
fan of that? I fucking love that
No,
record.
no. I love early Ministry.
Yeah,
Al tries to like disassociate himself from that, but I don't think he's being fair with himself. When you
Not
listen
at
to
all.
the early Ministry, if you want to talk about 80s synth pop,
Yeah,
that was Sympathy album was one of the best I've ever heard.
yeah, yeah. Work for Love as well, the
Yeah.
instrumental B-side.
Yes.
Um, it sounds like that Larry Levan produced an album called Padlock.
Okay.
It's a really, really, really amazing disco record, LP, long playing
Hmm.
LP.
Hmm.
It's Padlock, it's called.
Yeah.
Um, and I sold one off the turntable recently. I did a pop up shop,
Oh,
what we call a pop up shop, and I was playing this Larry Levan produced album. And
nice.
because he's got this guy was looking through disco records I had, and I thought I'll slip this on. And after about 10 minutes, he was like coming over. He's going like,
Yep.
"What's this, mate?" Do you know what I mean? I
Hey,
was like,
you have to
um,
manipulate, man. You know, he doesn't know he loves that record yet because
"Well,
he's like,
that again. That's another thing, that another conversation. But because I've always collected records, I've been a DJ, so and this is probably another reason why I appreciate your channel as well. I actually get a kick out of it, seeing you putting records up, and showing the sleeves and talking
so you
about
do
them.
like that, okay?
I
I
know. Well, yeah. I mean, well, when it's stuff that I think perhaps some people won't be fully appreciative of,
yeah,
like like Ministry. Like there's that album. Is it Twitch?
yeah.
Is it called Twitch? Things like
I
that.
did Twitch, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wrestle with that. I've whinged and moaned about it a little bit on the channel.
I've
Like,
heard you. I've heard what you've had to say. Yeah.
what do you think about that?
I
What's your
don't know, mate. I think you should just follow your own instincts. But I certainly don't think there's any issue. I don't see what you're doing as I see it as I think you're doing it in your own way, in your own manner. So I don't think it matters if the format feels a bit tired sometimes to you or
yeah.
whatever. No. I think
Yeah.
from the viewer's perspective, it's still really, really great to just see the
Cool.
records. I
Yeah.
love records, man.
I do
I'm a
too.
I'm a vinyl junkie till I
I
die. And
Do you ever have those moments though where you're like, am I feeding some weird innate addiction I have? Is it the
yeah,
actual music I care about, or do I want the physical, like what's more important? Because I have moments like that where I wrestle with it. Like, I have the music, that's what should matter. What does it matter if I have it on this? And I love records, I always have, but as I've gotten older, I've started to wonder like, is it an addiction?
look, I mean, I compile Spotify playlists now because like my missus has got like Bluetooth speaker, and it's convenient. I even have it like on my child's the back of my 1-year-old daughter's pram. We would go out walking around town and that we're blasting out,
Mhm.
Spotify playlists. But I mean, most of that music I've discovered on vinyl. I tend to not even search for music online. Well, I just go into record shops and look at records, and anything that sort of piques my curiosity, whether it's through connections to things I'm already aware of, like
Mhm.
it's on a certain label, or produced by a
Yeah.
certain person, or this, that, and the
Yep.
other.
Yep.
I'll either check it out, or I'm also one for, depending on the price, I buy a lot of stuff
Yeah.
without even checking it first,
Mhm.
because I like getting home with a record and
Me too.
putting it on the turntable, and
You're
then forming basing my opinion on that.
Yeah.
Um,
Me too.
that's where I get my kicks.
Yeah.
Um, Now, I have heard some great music that's only existed in the digital realm, but it doesn't really exist for me because I can't buy it and have it in my home
Mhm.
like I want it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it will
Yeah.
never get the same kind of l- attention or love.
Yeah, there's something to like the attention, like you put a record on a turntable and it demand who was it? I think it was Jason Pierce from Spiritualized. He put this perfectly where he said there's a certain amount of energy that becomes available when you put the record on the turntable, then you got to get up, flip it over, especially
Yeah,
if it's a double album. You've got the record in your hand. Also, what you just said, like I was big on labels. Like to
yeah,
me, when this label put a record out, and this is how honestly, this is how I found out about Conemelt.
yeah.
If it was on this label, I picked it up. I didn't need
There
the.
we go.
I
There we
trusted
go.
Andy to put good stuff out, and he always did. And that's a
Have you
little
got
less. Oh, go ahead.
Have you got the Vega God,
Oh
Jack
yeah,
of Swords
yeah,
twelve-inch?
Jack of
Yeah,
Swords. Yeah, yeah,
love that.
absolutely. Do you? What about the box? Do you have the box? The
What's
single.
that?
It's oh god, it's the Technova guy, I think. He went under a different name.
Right.
Oh man, I can't. Was it Jack of Swords? I think it was Jack of Swords.
Well, Jack of Swords did Vengergod. Yeah. So
I think he did
Vega
the
God rather.
box.
Right. I don't know if I know that one.
It's on Sabers. He
I'll have a
he
listen.
he samples John Cale. It's a Velvet Underground inspired record. Um,
Ah. Right.
yeah, it's on Sabers. Yeah, I highly
So, you
doubt
know
if he
what he's
ever.
sampled then? It'll be that track, The Gift, won't it? The one where John Cale's talking and
That's
it's
it.
all out on one side of the stereo channel, so he'd be able to grab it without the music behind it and
Yeah,
put it into a track.
the first song, it's like this 100 BPM on the A side. It's like this extended 100 BPM, like almost dub jam. And then you
Yeah.
flip it over and he does like 130 beats per minute techno track, techno version.
Right, wicked.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Sounds
Check
great.
that out. Yeah, it's on
I
Sabres. It
will.
came out right around the time Crash Bang Wallop came out, I think.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the odd thing that I may have just missed one way or the other. There was a lot of stuff around, you know.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah. Oh God. I mean, yeah, you've set me off again. I'm just thinking about all sorts of random, Andrew sort of related bits and
Well,
bobs
I'm
again.
thinking of all the Emissions records now. I mean, Panache was on Emissions.
Yeah.
Who was, oh, Carl Finlow. Remember Carl Finlow?
Yeah. Great
Yeah.
producer.
Yeah. He's still around. He's still doing his electro thing.
Absolutely. Well, he see on the label Subvert that we did the free cartridge family EPs on. He had a project called Voice Stealer.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
That's on Subvert.
I had a
But
ton of Voice Stealer stuff. Oh, yeah.
yeah. So
Silicon
he did a
Valley
single
was
and
on.
a single and a double album on that label that we did the cartridge family EPs on.
Man,
Um,
okay. I'm getting on Discogs today and I'm looking at the Cartridge Family. I don't know how I missed this because Subvert was a big, I love that label. But I guess mainly it was Carl Finlow, his
yeah.
Silicon Scally stuff too, like
Yeah.
anything that had his name on it.
Random Factor was his houseier type stuff, I think, but it's
Yeah,
still really good, like really
yeah.
cool, like
And he was a
different.
machine too, man. He was like Andy there. I mean, every week it seemed like he had at least a new remix out.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
there's still a lot of respect for him, and as someone who sells records, if I come across Carl Finlow stuff that I can sort of punt on, there's always a customer for it, like always.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seemed like one of his records lately got it was one of those records that blew up 20 years after it came out. I think it was what was it like Digital? I think the name of the song was Digital or something. Do you know what I'm talking
Right.
about?
Okay.
There's like a
No.
vocal on it. His his
Right.
his voice is kind of goes through a vocoder and
Yeah.
it found some new life here in the last few years. But
Yeah.
anyway, I don't know how much you got left in you. We've been doing this for over 2 hours now, but
Oh no, you're joking, really? Oh wow. Well, we should probably stop because we
yeah,
need to at some
yeah,
stage,
we do.
because people won't be able to handle it.
And it's
So
what, 9 o'clock? It's 9 o'clock for you, right?
yeah, but I don't. But literally, that is one of my concerns as well. Like I don't want to sort of take up too much of anybody's time. You know what I mean?
No, no, I hear you though. People are gonna love seeing this, and I said this before I started recording, but thanks a lot, Ash. I mean, I don't want to gush too hard, but yeah, you reaching out to me meant a lot to me personally. I was
And
surprised.
you making the video meant a lot to me, and I think I've made that plain to you, haven't I? You feel that, you know that. The
Yeah,
thing is, I mean, we are obviously we need to be staying in touch, and I want to be shooting you some emails here and there as well.
please.
Um, and I'm going to sort of give some thought to, whether or not there's things. I mean, oh, maybe one day I could stand to sort of look the past in the face again. I mean, because these stats as well. I mean, if any of them play, there could be some good unreleased music there. That's the other thing that's tempting.
Yeah,
That's even more tempting, to be honest. Is like because a lot of people are digging through their archives and coming up with stuff that was made years ago because it has a certain quality to it, which
yeah.
you
Well,
know,
and I think Conemelt, I won't keep you too much longer, but I think one of the great things about Conemelt and the reason I wanted to do the video is Conemelt has not, like we've already discussed, has not been re-released.
no,
And in this age where everything is so accessible, Conemelt is still you guys are in this little tiny area where not a lot of people know about you. You haven't re-released your stuff. People, a new generation two new generations really are looking for this great new music that came out years ago that just doesn't sound like anything today. And that's where Conemelt is. You guys reside in this little area that
Well,
I,
if I'm completely honest with you, my attitude actually was, and it's conversations with Nat really. Nat a few times has said, "Come on, like get the DATs out, like we should re-release some stuff or whatever."
Mm,
But if I'm honest with you, there was a part of me that was like, no, like if
yeah,
people if people didn't, this is going to sound a bit bad, but and it's really just a feeling, really. It's and not to be taken 100% seriously. I can be more reasonable than this,
mhm.
but it was a bit like, look, if people didn't get it, then
I hear you. I
it was
understand.
it was of its time, and really, yeah, and I did hope that some people would dig about and discover and
Yes.
find things over time, and that's exactly what we're talking about. So
Yeah.
there is a part of me that's quite comfortable with that.
Yeah. Because I think inherently everything getting re-released, there's something pure, if that
Yeah.
makes sense, about Conemelt not doing that. You
But the
guys,
problem is, it's the prices though as they go up online, especially via discounts.
yeah, yeah,
That makes me then kick into feeling like, "Oh, hang on a minute, people should be able to get this at an affordable price.
yeah,
People
yeah,
are getting up to 50, 60 quid, this, that, and the other. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, yeah.
So that would be the main reason, actually, from my
Hmm.
point of view. If we
Right.
could do it, would be
Hmm.
to at least, if there's a real demand for it, to at least allow people to buy it for a reasonable price and not be
Right.
to pay silly money for our records. But
Well, if you do, please let me
don't
know.
hold your breath, basically,
I
because
won't, because hey, I have the record, so
I
I'm good.
know.
But if you do re-release or do release unreleased stuff,
Yeah,
please let me know because I want
I
to hear.
will. I will, mate. You'll be the first to know.
Oh,
Well, you'll
well,
be
one
second
of the
first.
first. Yeah. No, hey, as long as I could hear it any way I could, that would be awesome. So
Yeah, you will, mate. You will. You definitely will.
awesome. All right. Hey, Ash,
Uh,
again, thank you so much. I
You're
really
welcome.
appreciate your time.
Love and respect to you, mate, and
You
keep it
too.
up. And
Thank,
thanks for your efforts. All right.
thank you. All right. I'll talk to you soon.
Take care, brother.
Bye.
All the best.